Hey guys, it's been a bit since my last video, and it hasn't been from a lack of work, so use this video to get you guys caught up on what's been going on. So let's get you caught up with everything I've done so far. The first thing I did was I got the aero catches in the hood. Then I focused on making this upper tie bar radiator support piece here. The headlight mounts here, and I got this piece here with the Zeus fastener for the upper part of the bumper. I have one for the other side, it's just over there on the table. It's pretty much done. I got just final welding to do. The mounts are all finalized on the frame rail, so it'll bolt right in. Then I went over to Buddy's house because he has a tube bender and I don't really have space for one in here. Bent up this front reinforcement here because I knew that was going to be the top mount for the cooling package. So I got that done, got it bolted on. Then I started working on the intercooler and the radiator and the fan shroud. So first thing I did was make the mount tabs here to bolt the radiator to the intercooler on both sides. Then I got a Mark V R32 fan shroud here. So then on the intercooler, reusing the one I had from the white car, it had some damage on the side, so I just cut off, I think it was like about three rows on the side. Capped it back off and started making the end tanks. So the bottom one, it's just 3-inch square extrusion here that I cut at an angle. And I put this divider in here that goes from the middle of the opening to the middle of the core. So half the airflow is going to go through this half, and then the bottom half of the airflow is going to come across and go through this half of the core to get a more even charge through it, cool it down more efficiently. How I'm going to do the lower radiator mount is picked up these grommets from work. They're just I don't know if it's an AC condenser or a radiator mount grommet, but basically the radiator would have a little nub that sticks down that would sit inside this grommet, and the grommet would sit in a circle opening. So what I'm going to do is take this leftover tube here and make it so there's a pin that's sticking up right here, so the grommet will sit, you know, about right here, just like this, and then have a plate that comes off of the inlet tube here with the circle cut out that will just rest on the grommet right here, and that'll support the weight from the bottom. And then the top, I'll just make a bracket, probably just an L bracket that welds on here to a tab. They'll just bolt onto the front reinforcement here. That way, that will allow I can take things off in pieces as needed or as an entire assembly, where I could just easily access the 4 bolts for the fan shroud, pull just the shroud off if I needed, or I got the 4 bolts for the radiator, so I can pull just that off with the shroud if needed, or I can pull the whole package as an assembly, or if I wanted to, I could pull the front reinforcement and the cooling package out as an assembly, and then we'll just leave call it this lower tie bar here that bolts from the frame rail, goes under everything to the frame rail on this side that the lower mounting pads will be attached to. So really quick way to disconnect the whole front of the car for service, or easily just do kind of one component at a time for, you know, any sort of service or repair in the future. Now the upper tank, it's the same 3-inch square extrusion that I cut triangles in. and it's really tight to the bar here. As you can see, I wanted to lay it forward as far as possible. That way I just had endless opportunities as far as intake manifold design. Originally I wanted to go with a center feed, but there's just, even with this much extra room than factory, there's just not enough room to have runners, plenum, throttle body, and then a connection to the intercooler. So cut open the end tank and sink this in so it's like that, coming out at the angle. And then I'll get, 3-inch bend off of it to mate it up to the throttle body with 2 couplers in there. So now the turbo placement, see if I can get it down here. It's mounted to the body, and that's the outlet right here. So it's gonna be pretty tight to the axle, but I don't have to worry about any movement from the turbo. So it's gonna come, the charge pipe's gonna come out like this, run along the frame rail, and then come in right here. So a reason why I designed it this way is with the turbo hard mounted to the body here, there's no flex in the charge pipe from the turbo to the intercooler. So I don't have to worry about couplers coming off or anything like that. The flex will be in the manifold itself with these flex bellows here. And obviously there'll be another one for this side, which will come to the head that way. And then the only other point of flex will be the cold side of the piping over here. Sorry, I've been fighting a cough for the last few weeks. Another reason why I haven't really been too hyped on making videos if I'm coughing all the time. But hopefully I'm getting over it here soon. I'm definitely a lot better than I was. But also to expand on that, with the turbo hard mounted, I don't have to worry about putting a bunch of flex or room for movement in the exhaust, which is super helpful with having it come out of the quarter panel here. It allows me to have a real tight cut. I may open it up a little bit and put a plate right here, depending on how much heat and flame comes out. But it'll definitely get wrapped inside the car with some header wrap and whatnot, just to try to keep heat down and all that jazz. Got the battery circuit basically all wired. I need to decide on a battery I'm going to get and mount it in the battery box to do the last bit from here into the battery. I don't want to have, cut it too long and put my terminals on and then have the wire be all janky inside the box. So goes from the battery to circuit breaker, and then from the circuit breaker comes up to kill switch, and the kill switch goes to that continuous duty solenoid, and then the alternator also comes in onto, where's the alternator coming into? One of the other sides, and then you got your power wire here. So when you cut the power with the kill switch, it cuts power here, which cuts power coming through from the alternator into the car. So this kill switch will kill all power in the car. The only power that will be there will be from the battery to this point here. And we have the main power wire right here for the electric power steering. You can see that I ran the power wires under, will be underneath a heel plate, and then that grommet goes into the frame rail. Through the frame rail, it then comes out right here. We got both battery and alternator right there, if you can see it, to this point, which is a power lug, and then off to the starter. This goes to alternator. I have a 110 amp fuse in there, and to the alternator. So to power the fans on this, being that it's a PWM fan, this plug from the Mark IV stuff, it's the same plug, it'll just be wired different. So I'll have one of these will be a power, one will be a ground, one of these will be a ground, and the other one will be wired up to the ECU, which controls the pulse width for the power, which then controls the fan speed. So I'll have a lot more tunability with that. It won't just be a low on off and a high on off. I'll be able to start the fan slow and gradually speed them up or gradually slow them down based on water temperature. So that'll be fun. And then, like I said, this was a Mark V fan shroud, and it was about 1.5 inches taller than the Mark IV Radiator. So I cut a strip out of it here and then cut the very top edge off and glued it down to the proper height. And then I had to relocate the top tabs on each side as the bottom tabs lined up. But these ones were a little bit off, and it just bolts right on and good to go. So with all of that, I'll show you a bit how I installed the arrow catch latches and how I trimmed and glued the fan shroud up to fit the Mark IV Radiator.